A successful adventuring party relies on a variety of characters with different skills and backgrounds, but is the same true of the players? Welcome to Gaining Advantage. Welcome to Gaining Advantage. We are using role-playing games like Dungeons & Dragons to help you make lives better. We have a huge announcement, our big project, Limitless Heroics, including characters with disabilities, mental illness, and neurodivergence in 5th edition, will launch live on Kickstarter January 4th. I just finished writing the main manuscript for it, and it's going through the editing process. I've got artwork for it pouring in, and super excited about the progress that we're making. We are going to be ready to go, and we want everybody to be able to have a chance to see this. Limitless Heroics is going to include D&D 5th edition game mechanics for over 450 symptoms, plus over 90 new assistive magic items, real-world examples of each symptom so the players can learn more and better represent the symptoms, opening articles discussing how and why to implement these options, how to discuss it with your players, and common tropes to avoid. All the tools that you need to run an inclusive campaign. If you want to find out more about it, just go to inclusiverpg.com for all the details. That's inclusiverpg.com. Now, the book is going to use a dyslexia and screen reader friendly format, plus an indexed audio version for the visually impaired, and free random generators to quickly generate character symptoms and more assistive magic items. We've consulted with dozens of people with disabilities, neurodiversity, and mental illness, and we've hired a 100% disabled, neurodiverse, and mentally ill creation team, or those who are directly involved in treatment. Stretch goals include NPCs by Anna Holden from D&D Disability and Shauna Spain, an adventure by Jennifer Kretschmer, and more resources by Alicia Marie, Brittany Hay, and Emma Carlson. So to make sure you don't miss it, go to inclusiverpg.com, sign up for our newsletter. Just for doing that, you get 69 free 4K battle maps. It's a $10 value right there. And it also includes a new Wizard Arcane Tradition as a subclass. There's lots of different resources you get, news, information, all kinds of stuff. inclusiverpg.com. Go sign up right now. Diversity is making strides in the RPG space, or baby steps anyway. How do we extend those strides or add more steps toward the goal? Today, we welcome Jasper William Cartwright and Jeremy Cobb, 2/3 of the podcast Three Black Halflings, a show that promotes and discusses diversity in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition and in the world of nerddom at large. 3BH offers DM and player tips, interviews with D&D luminaries and up-and-comers alike, and actual play series such as the Cobb and the Caterpillar and Outlaws and Obelisks. The former is the official actual play show for Twin Drum Wagadu Chronicles setting, and the latter is a post-apocalyptic Western in a North Africa-inspired setting. Hello, Halflings.
Hey!
Thanks so much for having us.
That was a great intro. That's like the best intro I feel like we've had. That was awesome. I was like, that's all our stuff. Whoa, cool.
Yeah, I wrote it.
Yeah, that was great. Oh, in which case, thanks, Jeremy.
Yeah, thanks. We may have to save that for the future people.
Yeah.
But thanks so much for having us.
All right, so what would you like us to know about each of you personally, specifically talking to the role-playing game crowd?
Ooh. Do you want to go first, Jeremy?
I think for me, I think one thing that I've noticed, at least from engaging with like the fans of our show and seeing fans of other shows, is that a lot of times people will, and actually just being a fan of shows, it's very easy to objectify people to the point where it's like they don't seem like a person to you anymore. They seem like when you're engaging with a piece of content, it's very easy to objectify the creators and look up to them as like they're on a pedestal or they're some kind of like unreachable thing. But I think it's important to keep in mind that at least, well, no, in both of our cases, and I think in every case of every creator, we're people at the end of the day, and especially when it comes to our show, where we started with no connections, no podcast network at the beginning, nothing like that. We pretty much started from scratch. We're very much still people, and we are very much still learning as we go. So I think it's best to, while it's certainly like if we were to make a mistake or something, it's great to hold us accountable. I think people also have to just come in with a mindset of like, we're talking about people and people making a show and learning how to make it as they go. That's what I would say.
I like that. I, however, am actually a robot, so feel free to not treat me as a human.
This is the first I'm hearing of this. We got to add this to the intro.
It's a
I'll start
revelation.
editing this right now.
It's a revelation indeed. No, what I would say is that it's been a wonderful experience getting to be a part of this community, because there's a lot of love, and I think that Jeremy is absolutely right to point out that I think it can go a little too far in some cases. It can be a bit too idyllic or a bit too far in one direction or another. But like generally, there is I feel like this is my crowd of people. It's very very wholesome, very caring, and it's enjoyable to get to do this and feel like there is the space to make a mistake if we should ever do so. Maybe we have already, but I'm sure someone on the internet will point it out if we do. But yeah,
it's already growing.
Yeah. But I feel less pressured to get everything right, which is nice. And I'm just really enjoying the ride. I'm very, very thankful that I get to enjoy it at all.
Just a man standing in front of a microphone, hoping that somebody will like me.
That's exactly
what I was thinking.
That's exactly
exact sentences.
That is exactly it. I am a rom-com, a walking rom-com. That's what I am.
What rom-com would each of us be if we had to pick a rom-com? I'm trying to think of which one. Fight Club.
That is wow.
Mainly just because I like the movie, not because I actually relate to the narrator or Tyler Durden or Marla. Just I like the movie and I enjoy engaging with it as a rom-com.
Quite funny if you think about it as a rom-com. Actually, that's quite I haven't really thought about that context before. But quite funny. Yeah.
All right. So most people watching or listening are probably familiar with you. But for those who've heard of your show but not actually listened, tell us why everyone should be checking it out.
I'll jump over this one because Jeremy is an incredible DM, and our latest season of Outlaws and Obelisks is incredible. I find it very hard to be complimentary of myself, but I don't have to be in this case because it's mostly Jeremy's work and not mine, so I can. And it's just it really rocks. It's so unique and different, I think, to other worlds that people might have heard before or played in, and I think it'll give them a lot of new flavor and fun when thinking about playing Dungeons and Dragons. And then not only that, I just think it's a total blast. It's very funny. We like to keep the show pretty funny as well. And I think that one of our biggest selling points has been that we talk about some pretty tricky subjects, but we always do it in a kind of a light way. We try to make it filled with humor and levity, and we try to come at it from a point of view of like Jeremy was saying, we are three humans also trying to figure this stuff out together. So, yeah, that's what I would say.
I think that's well said.
Thanks, Jeremy.
Thank you for the compliment.
Yeah, you're welcome. You rock.
All right. So, thinking about diversity in gaming can sometimes feel like watching a kid grow. You don't notice the growth on a daily basis, but you can see the progress when they grow out of their clothes. So, what growth have you seen, and what does the goal look like to you, and what do you see as the next steps toward that goal?
I can jump in. I would say a lot of the growth that I've seen, there's actually been a lot of growth even in the last year. The new race rules when it comes to D&D, in terms of they're gradually doing away with racial ability score bonuses, or at least prescribed racial ability score bonuses. They're letting people be a lot more flexible with how they approach them.
Just to jump in as well, I think they're moving away even from the word race, which I think is useful in this topic.
I was just about
so apologies. That
was the next thing I was going to say. I completely agree. They're moving towards lineage. We're seeing more inclusivity in the creators that Wizards is working with. You're seeing more women, you're seeing more people of color, you're seeing more LGBT people and people who fit into multiple categories, including in terms of people creating the actual books. Amy Vorpal, I know, had a big hand in I think it's Fitzbin's what is it? What is something of dragons? The new dragons book.
Treasury of Dragons, isn't it?
Treasury, I think.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
She, I think, wrote all of the Fitzbin sections for that
Wow.
book. So all the little
Very
asides, that was her. She like shaped the personality of the title character. That would be an example. And we're also seeing more diversity in the actual play and D&D, like TTRPG space in general. Like in terms, I mean, look, our show would be an example, but you're seeing a lot more other creators, people of color and LGBT people, et cetera, just coming out of the woodwork.
Yeah, and I think getting prominence as well in bigger spaces on shows, you know, that like are being featured as DMs and players for bigger shows. And I think there's, you know, like Abria, I think on Critical Role and Dimension 20, I think is a pretty huge step in the sense that like those are two of the most popular, if not the most popular, sort of Dungeons and Dragons shows. And I think featuring having a black woman in the forefront of that, I think, you know, it's that whole, you know, representation is key is like such a kind of old hat term, but it really, like, there's no better way to kind of put it, really. Which is just that, like, you know, I part of, like, it's weird because I always think I don't even know if I'd have started Three Black Halflings this year. Do you know what I mean? Because the whole reason why I started Three Black Halflings was because I went onto like YouTube and I was looking for like black creators in the space and I didn't see any. Whereas I think if I went on now, it would be like there'd be so much, or well, there'd be a lot more than there was, put it that way. And I might have been like, there's not really a gap for it, so I won't do anything. So it's very interesting. And I think that now is the point where we have to keep encouraging people and make sure that like people like me don't think, oh, it's covered now. We have to keep going. We have to keep embracing this and go even further. Because no matter how far we push it, you know, all of the major DMs, like mainstay major DMs for all the big shows, are all still white men. You know, most of the people at the head of Wizards are still white men. Do you know what I mean? So there is still a lot of systemic change, I think, or like systemic progress. Not even change necessarily, because I don't think those shows have to change, or, you know, those people have to change. It's just like more people need to be welcomed to the table on a full-time basis. I think that's like I think in terms of like the next step forward, that's probably what I would say is like they need to be like sitting at the table all the time, all year round, as opposed to, you know, dinner guests.
And I think I would add to that more diversity in terms of which TTRPGs have prominence and are seen by people, because there are so many good TTRPGs out there that are made by independent creators. Very creative, very innovative, a lot of them. We played a really fun one on our show once. We're planning to do it again sometime, called Paradox Perfect. And the creator of that is, well, I mean, he fits into multiple parts, like racial and I guess gender/sexuality diversity. So like that I think that would be a big next step as well, is seeing more games other than just Dungeons and Dragons being like the face of TTRPGs in general.
And I think that's down to a lot of the shows, you know, that's down to, you know, maybe us, you know, other big TTRPG shows, because I don't think Wizards will ever like throw their, you know, they're not going to do that. And that I would never fault them for. I don't think like that would just be bad business practices to just openly campaign.
Please for your stop engaging with our product. Instead go listen or go play
else. But yeah, I think that's absolutely correct. I think the more diverse the voices are, then I think that it will welcome more people in and allow them to find a corner of this space that suits them. Because I think that's ultimately that's one of the things that I think happens a lot with TTRPGs, is it's a very all-encompassing thing. You know, once you're in, you're like so in, you know, you really invest because you're making up worlds and you're making up characters. And so I think it's hard to kind of dabble, I think, in TTRPGs. And so you do really, I think, tend to like occupy a space. You listen to certain shows, you watch certain YouTube videos and all that kind of thing. And I think that everyone will eventually hopefully will eventually find their space, like a safe space for them. And maybe it is more of a traditional D&D space where it's just about killing monsters and doing this. And maybe there is somewhere on the other end where it's a bit more about like the role play and the interpersonal stuff and things like that. So it'll be, I think, the increased diversity allows more of that, allows more people to come into the space and go, oh, this is where I should be, and I'm going to sit here and enjoy this thing for what it is.
Yeah, no, it's interesting though that you talk about, well, you know, Wizards isn't going to promote other games or whatever, and I mean that's absolutely true. But at the same time, I have noticed that in this space, that when it comes to third-party creators, and especially the smaller, but some of the bigger ones too, are very happy to promote each other. That I think this space, once you get away from sort of big corporate,
once you get away from wizards, yeah,
right. So, but then you find that I've never seen an industry that is so collaborative. That and I thought, well, I mean, that's fitting given that what we're doing is creating collaborative games. So people are already used to working together and coming from different backgrounds and all that kind of stuff, and it's just really struck me how owners of these sort of medium-sized companies are perfectly happy to help others, to work together. And I think some of that may have to do with sharing freelancers. And but also it just seems like everyone is kind of happy to see each other, and I just don't really see among most of those companies any sort of animosity. It's like, hey, we're all in this together.
Yeah, I think that could be partly to do with the newness of the industry as well, because I think it's obviously boomed a lot over the last, like, say, 10 years. I think it's gone, like, it's gone from being a relatively, not niche, but like it's been
much more niche.
Yeah, much more niche than it was. And then I think now it is becoming nearly mainstream, I think, at this point. Like, I think in a few more years' time, I think, with stuff like the Critical Role, series and all that kind of stuff, I think it's only going to get bigger and bigger. And I think part of it is the newness of it. I think you see it with a lot of like new businesses. They kind of practice in a space where they kind of, where they do realize that actually, like, they're not competing with the big boys. Do you know what I mean? They're nowhere near them. So actually, why not club together? Why not us own this little space together and see if we can collaborate and see if we can, do things and create things? And I think that's like, I think that's a lot of the way that business is going, because I think there's an understanding that we need to save small business, like, generally. And I think that that kind of banding together, that creating of a community, makes it a lot easier to then tackle those larger corporations and businesses. So I think that's partly, it's almost a bit inherent, I think, of like today's world. And I hope that one day we can all band together and take down wizards. No, but
there's an interesting conversation to be had about the way that businesses do that in general. Like I think it's just kind of part of how capitalism functions. Like, at the beginning, things are a lot friendlier, and then once somebody comes in to take over and essentially try to win the game, that's when you have a situation where you have these gigantic corporations that are extremely protective of their IP. Like, you get something like Disney, basically, at that point.
Who just buys everything.
Just trying to win the game. Really, honestly, we should break up some of these corporations. But anyway,
Wizards of the Coast have just emailed trying to buy Three Black Halflings as well. I have accepted the money.
$14 billion.
Honestly, if Wizards of the Coast did that, I probably would take it. I'm really sorry, everyone. 14 billion is a lot of money. Like, that's a lot. I could just set up another podcast. You can all come listen to that, and it'll be better because we'd have budget. So.
$14 billion budget.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. So what do you see as the, we've kind of talked about the present and the future and that, what do you see as like the next thing that you'd like to see happen as far as steps toward that goal, or is it just more of the same?
Continuing to hire. I think what you need is people in the actual companies that are producing this content to be diverse. I think then you will have more diverse content and usually better content, because when you have a greater diversity of perspectives, you often end up with a better product in the end. And I think that's basically what you need. It's similar to the acting industry. Both Jasper and I are actors. You don't just need more actors of color or gender diverse actors or anything like that. You also need the people behind the camera, and especially the people with the money. You want those people to become more diverse as well. I think, as Jasper acknowledged earlier, Wizards is still ultimately owned by white men, most of whom are straight and cis. So you're going to want diversity at all levels of creation, of the creativity, of the creativity industry, as opposed to just at like the basic or the lowest level, like, oh, we just hired a trans employee. And it's like, they wrote a single book. It's like, okay.
No,
yeah.
They should be having input on every book. Do you know what I mean? That's the key. Is that cause I think then every single book has that kind of that approach where you're not necessarily. And I think this is probably my big thing that I would say I think needs to change. So we need to kind of get out of this space where we feel like, oh, we're either trying to change everything or we're trying to make everything. We're trying to kind of what's the right word for it? I just had it in my head and then it's disappeared. We're trying to make everything like PC or make everything like
pander.
safe for everyone. Yeah, pander for it. And I don't think that's the case. It's more like what we're trying to do is kind of we're trying to enable everyone to be able to interact with something.
Yeah,
and
be inclusive.
Yeah, be inclusive. And that doesn't mean it's going to be for everyone. That doesn't mean it has to be for everything. That doesn't necessarily mean that someone won't look at that and find it problematic for themselves. But generally, it will be like a personal reaction as opposed to like large swathes of people who are literally like unable to engage with the content, right? Because, I mean, gore horror is going to be something that forever some people just can't get on board with. But there's no, do you know what I mean? You can't change the genre. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But I think if you approach the making of gore horror with as many people in mind as possible, you then create it in a way where you go like, okay, in the general swathe of people, we will like everyone will be okay with this or on board with this. Who wants to be on board with this? And then if you don't like gore horror, you can then avoid that, but you can still engage with other parts of this game or this thing or whatever, without kind of feeling like you're missing out or without feeling like you're being targeted or victimized or whatever it is. So I think we have to kind of change the language of like how we approach diversity and inclusion, because I think this idea of changing things or making things better or like simplifying them or pandering or whatever, I think all of that kind of language needs to go, because it needs to be about enriching, I think, is ultimately like the word I would use. We need to enrich the game so that everyone feels like they can come into the game, into any TTRPG, pick it up and go like, this is something that I can safely play with and enjoy with my friends in the way that we want to do it. And if I want to leave out certain things, I can leave those out. If I want to add certain things, I can add those in. And because I think that we get into a space where people are like, no, you shouldn't do this, and you shouldn't do this, and you shouldn't do this. And it's like, well, actually, they enjoy it, and it's not problematic for them. And I don't think it's problematic for society at large that they enjoy it. So therefore, there's no real reason why they shouldn't be able to enjoy it. So I think there's a little bit of language change that I think needs to happen, and we need to be a little bit more pragmatic in the way that we approach the problem, and not just be like, Wizards should fire Jeremy Crawford and get a black woman in it. It's like, whoa. Jeremy Crawford's got bills too. You know what I mean? He's like, it's cool. We can just hire someone next to Jeremy Crawford. It's fine. Like, we don't have to fire someone to make space. There's plenty of room at the table.
Following through on even the gore horror example, the like thinking about inclusivity can be as simple as avoiding cliches. So if you're looking at the genre itself, you're like, maybe the black guy won't die first. Maybe we won't just fall into the whole like final girl dichotomy where she's like virginal and like sex is evil and blah blah blah, unless we're actually trying to make a specific point. Like let's approach it a little bit with a little bit more creativity and more thought, and then like look at the subtext of the stuff that you're making and how it may come across to certain people. Know your
subtext, because then if you do it and people get mad, you can be like, well, that's kind of the point. Like, I want people to get mad. Do you know what I mean? Like, at least then you can say with your chest, I meant to do that, as opposed to like, oh, that was a mistake. I'm so like, because that's where I think that we get a lot of issues nowadays. Whereas at least if you're trying to be overt about something, you're trying to make a statement, and people can then make a decision whether they think that you're not a particularly nice person or not. Like, do you know what I mean? They can make that decision for themselves, as opposed to it being this sort of muddy thing where like, you didn't really mean to piss anyone off.
Yeah. Like another example would be a little old school, Silence of the Lambs. The movie Silence of the Lambs has been over the years decried for being transphobic, which I can completely understand where they're coming from, because I've watched multiple things by trans people talking about why they find the portrayal of Buffalo Bill offensive, but I don't get the idea that I think Thomas Harris, who wrote those books, was attempting to be transphobic, nor that Jonathan Demme was attempting to be transphobic with the depiction. So I think what you're looking at is a case where the creators honestly did not have the perspective necessary to realize
Had a big blind
how
spot.
their character was going to come across. There's probably ways to have done that character in a much better way that would de-emphasize a lot of the elements that are problematic for people. And really, the core of that movie isn't even Buffalo Bill anyway. So it ends up being like an unfortunate thing that detracts from the overall experience, where obviously that movie was made in the 90s. It's coming, it's a whole different scenario. But that would be an example of like, if we had a time machine and you could go back and say, hey guys, actually, just to flag this up, you can't.
There's a couple films
now,
from the 90s.
Yeah, you might want to
go back
to. Might want to reconsider this one, this particular aspect.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, that's a really good point, and I think it's something that I know that I struggle with just watching old movies, TV shows, and things like that. And you cringe at stuff.
Yeah.
And you go, wow. And the thing is, you can also, I go, okay, I remember watching this back when it was first released, and I didn't think about it then. And,
I was actually just watching Inside Job, which is like a new animated show on Netflix, and there's a part where like two of them are sat on the sofa like, hey, let's reminisce about the past, like I want to like get into stuff that you were into as a kid. One of them holds up a DVD of The Goonies, and then it just jump cuts to like half an hour later. They're sat there in the dark, both of them look really worried, and the woman just goes, so their disabled brother is just straight up chained to the wall. The other one just goes, yeah, that didn't age too well. And I suddenly was just like, oh my god, like there is, and it, it's so easy, I think, because Goonies, hands down, one of my favorite movies when I was a kid. Like I watched that DVD so much, like the VHS or whatever of that thing, I broke it. Do you know what I mean? So like, but like, yeah, man, and I think it is difficult. Like I said, it's a tricky line to ride, and I think the only way that we make it less tricky and less problematic is if we take away the vitriol of like liking a thing that maybe has problematic elements. You know what I mean? I think that we have to just find a balance. Do you know what I mean? Find a way to actually talk about it as opposed to just throw stuff about it.
Yeah, I think it's about remembering that nothing is ever going to be perfect. And it's all, whatever you do, no matter how hard you try, someone's going to get offended. At some point, so it's about accepting.
And some people genuinely want to get offended just because they want to be offended. Like that's just how, like honestly, that is just like how they live. I've met those people, and it's incredibly frustrating. It's like and you just like, well, I mean,
you can't win that battle.
Yeah, I was like, you've leveled criticism at me here, but. Sure, I mean, if that's really something that upsets you, then I'm sorry. Please don't engage with my content in the future, because honestly, I can't change that. Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, oh, your voice is dumb. Like, okay. I'll put no, I'm not going to put an accent on. That's just the bottom line. I'm not going to do that. So.
Jasper is actually French. This is all an accent that he's putting on right now.
I am. It's all
he changed his. He's saying this because he got this exact comment from me. Back when he had his French accent.
Yeah, go listen to the first episode of Three Black Halflings. I hard switch during the first episode from French to English.
I openly tell him on air that his voice is dumb, and he switches accents.
Literally the second he says it, I switch. That's how it goes down.
Well, that's all right. This show is available in both audio and on YouTube, and the audio gets about 10 times the amount of downloads as I get views on YouTube. And I've had people tell me, oh, you have a really nice voice to listen to. And I'm like, that's like saying you have a face for radio,
I was going to say the exact same. As soon as you started talking, I was like, ooh, that's a good voice.
See?
Yeah. It's good.
Right. So there was one more. Oh, yeah. One other question that kind of came to mind as we were talking about this, you talk about games being approachable, all right? And I'm thinking about the games, these sort of Africa-based games, all right? And there's been other kind of culturally focused games, the Islands of Sinauna and other ones like that are very specifically focused on a particular culture or cultures within a particular region or something like that. All right. And so, me as a, okay, I check all of the privilege boxes, like across the board, except for wealth. But like
Sure.
everything else, like I can check that one. All right. And so, when I hear about a game like that, I think that's really cool. And, like I want to pick up that book and read it. And I want to watch some, some actual plays of it and stuff like that. But like for my personal group of 6 people are all white. And we've got some diversity beyond that. But when it comes to, to race or whatever term ancestry, we're all white. All right. And so, looking at the games, like, I feel like, could we even, play that without that, anything close to that experience and do it justice?
Yeah. I think this is something that I think is potentially quite helpful to share, which is that, like, I've had the exact same experience. Like, I grew up in a white middle class area. Pretty much all of my friends before I went off to like university were white. I did my father, who is black, wasn't around, and so I didn't really meet black, African, Zimbabwean, which is where my dad's from, culture until I was like older. Like even in the last few years is probably when I've engaged with it more than I ever have really previously. And so like the same trepidation comes for me when I'm doing it. I think the only difference is that I'm not kind of necessarily worried about someone calling me out on it. Do you know what I mean? Because I feel like it feels a bit safer for me to explore this thing in the name of like, I want to explore and I want to find out more and I want to engage with it. And I think that the ultimate thing that I would say, and it goes back to a little bit what Jeremy was saying about stereotypes, which is that you ultimately have to just handle that work with respect and reverence. And I think that it's about, I think in the same way that you would realistically with an Arthurian legend. You know, the only difference is that is like you probably know the Arthurian legend or whatever. You know, if you're a white person growing up and have had the same education I did, you know those kinds of legends so well. You know them almost like the back of your hand, and so therefore it kind of becomes easier for you to play around in that world and to be more free and feel like you can have more fun because you just know it well. You know that like you're paying the right kind of respect to the world. You know the laws of the world almost. There is like traditions of banquets, you know what I mean, and like the ways to hold your goblet and whatever it may be, jousting and all those kinds of things which you kind of just inherently know because of what you were told when you were growing up and things like that. You can then play around with them and you don't have to worry about them being offensive. And I think that's the only way I would say, the only difference I would say, both for myself and for you looking to engage with this content, is just it's just about putting that little bit more work in. Get to yourself to a point where you really feel comfortable in that world. You really understand what the customs are of that world and what the people are like and what they and how they interact with each other, what they do and how they and like the even like down to like currency and all of that kind of thing. Just understand it. Like as soon as you understand it, then you won't fall into that same stereotype and you won't fall into that same kind of icky place of feeling like you're not allowed to play it. And then like generally outside of that, look, if you don't have a really killer African accent, it's totally fine to just use your own one. You know what I mean? Like that's I think just like a general good rule. And so I'd say it's just be I think it's you wouldn't probably think of yourself as being sensitive with quote unquote white culture like Nordic or Vikings or whatever it may be, Celtic, like, but we probably are just inherently because we know so much about it, right? Because it's been so baked into our culture. So I would just say to be as sensitive, know it as well as you know the other stuff. And I don't think you can really go wrong. And I definitely, as a person of color, wouldn't have a problem with you. I would love you to engage with something like Wagadu or Utarum, which is where Outlaws and Obelisks is set, because I think that would be dope. It would dope to see more people play around in that world and do more stuff. And I don't think it's ever right to say like you can't play here. You know what I mean? That would be so counterintuitive, I think.
I think that it's worth saying also that when you dig into some of the origins of some of these stories, it's interesting to see how much has changed over time and how much many of the popular versions, and I'm talking about European stuff, if we talk about the Arthurian legends or say the Norse gods, so on and so forth, so much of that has become completely conflated, altered, switched around. I only recently found out in the original stories, Loki isn't even Thor's brother. He's like his uncle. They're not even related. I mean, obviously they're not related because like he's Loki's a giant, but like they were not raised as brothers. Thor has red hair, famously has red hair, not blonde hair. Like completely different dude. And what's interesting is with the Arthurian legends, the recent movie The Green Knight, or just Green Knight, I think, that came out earlier this year, it's actually much closer to what you would get in a lot of other versions of the Arthurian legends. But even then, like some of the characterizations are completely different of the characters, and some even they'll change from story to story. Anyway, like the lead character of that, Gawain, changes drastically over time in terms of how he's depicted. The point being, even those stories, people are coming at with a certain level of like, look, I'm just telling a cool version of this story because I have the basic gist of what's going on. I don't know the whole history of the Arthurian legends. I haven't read all of the different, like I haven't read like the very first time that Lancelot appeared in the stories, because Lancelot was a later addition to a lot of them, and so on and so forth. Like the same is kind of true for like say the Wagadu Chronicles or Utarum, where like you don't need to know every single detail. It's okay if you have a general gist, as long as you are coming in then with a certain level of respect. And so you're avoiding trying to be like, okay, so this is an African setting, so nobody can read. Everybody like doesn't wear clothes. They have bones in their noses. Like, and you start like running down this really like this just really bad list of just ugly stereotypes that are very frequently not based in any kind of reality. And it's worth looking like at some of the actual cultures. Actually, one very useful thing in the Wagadu playbook that was released, The Child and the Oath, you can see where like some of the cultures that each of the lineages are drawing from in the book. And so you can actually do a little bit of research on those cultures and see like, oh, I can now see pictures of what, like how those people actually dress and what kinds of houses they live in. I can read a little bit about their history. So maybe you can base your character on an actual historical figure. You're like, oh, okay. And you have a better understanding. You don't have to do like hours and hours of research, but even like 20, 30 minutes of just reading about something could make all the difference.
Just getting to know it a bit. Yeah.
I don't think there's any need to be scared about it.
Yeah, I do think it's worth noting as well that I think potentially there is some slight trepidation nowadays is that like a lot of these, say, African or Asian like fairy tales or myths or legends haven't had the same like treatment where they are like a part of like the lexicon of like our culture, right?
Well, not in the West, but
not in the West. That's what I'm saying. Talking in terms of our context, and what I think is like for a lot of, there is just still a lot of I think that for a lot of people in the West, they still think, well, Africa's very precious about all of their gods and I think in huge parts there are, but also in other parts, there's just cities like us and probably have a mixture of people who do pay reference to certain gods and don't believe in God. And do you know what I mean? So I think it's also kind of partly born out of like a slight bias of being like, they're somehow more protective than we are. But I mean, I don't think that there are many that are more protective than like English people are of like Christianity. I mean, we've got churches everywhere. Do you know what I mean? It is everywhere. It permeates our schools, our everything. So, and then to that point, I think the thing that maybe that I was sort of getting at before, and that Jeremy may think of. It's just like the Arthurian legend has been told literally 1,000 times. Like, I can't tell you how bored I am of seeing Merlin pop up in random. It's like literally, it's like people if they need a wizard in medieval times, it's always Merlin, always. Like, or it's like another name beginning with M that's definitely Merlin but not called Merlin. You know what I mean? And it's like, and I think that that's also part of the difference where some of this reverence comes from. Is it's like, well, we haven't got that yet. We haven't even got like a familiarity or even like one truthful depiction of the things. Do you know what I mean? If we've had depictions of stuff in the past, it was probably in the 90s, like we were talking about earlier, like it was probably a little problematic or really general or whatever it is. And so I think they're just like, they're coming from very different places. Like, you know, when you're like, our opinions of these two different sides of the coin are coming from such different places, it's almost impossible to kind of to say, to like do one and think, oh, this is fine, this is unproblematic, this is whatever it is, because it hasn't had the treatment, it hasn't had that exposure. Where I think now Arthurian legend feels like it is general knowledge. It's kind of like, oh, it was a dude and round table and some knights and a Merlin and a thing. So it's very easy to become very general about it. Do you know what I mean? It's very easy to be, because no one really owns it. It's not really a, you know, whereas I don't think the same can be said of you know, other cultures, you know, and many other cultures.
Yeah, I think on that, pretty much following from that, it's just about doing just at least a little bit of research into it.
Yeah.
Because even if you were going to do like an Arthurian thing, I would advise that somebody actually look up some of the older ones, because there are some really, like, as famous as Gawain and the
just put
Green
Merlin
Knight
in there.
is,
It's fine. It's fine.
That's the thing. Like, as famous as Gawain and the Green Knight, the story is among like Arthurian scholars, most people have no idea what happens in that story. And it is completely unlike the versions of Arthur the opening of that story, a dude gets his head cut off, picks it up, and walks out. You don't hear about that in other Arthurian legends. That thing's bonkers. But like, and that's the root of the story.
Pretty sure Merlin did that, actually. Merlin
is probably just drawing from that
in the like Disney version. What is it, The Sword and the Stone? That's exactly what happens.
The scene where somebody decapitates Merlin and then he picks up his head.
Yeah, someone, I come into that scene unanimated,
decapitate Merlin,
cut off Merlin's head, and go enough, and then I walk out.
He gets up. He gets pretty mad that you cut through his beard. But like it's really about doing just a little bit of research, and essentially what you would do if you imagine, I guess, that you were from an African nation or an Asian nation that did not have exposure to the Arthurian legend on nearly the same level. And so you were like, I want to do something set in King Arthur's court, because I saw like a thing about this one time. It sounds cool. There's a rock and there's a sword in it. I mean, look, if you're born in Taiwan, I don't know how many versions of the Arthurian legend you've seen. Like, maybe you've only seen one version of it. I don't know how pervasive the various adaptations have been over there. But any number of countries. But like, yeah, you could say, oh, okay, let's do a little bit of research. Oh, here are some of the big characters. Oh, cool. Well, let's do this aspect of it. It's essentially the same thing. Like, you can look up, there's all kinds of really interesting African legends from all over the continent, all kinds of different groups of people. And you could, like, for example, and this is kind of like a West African / Caribbean thing, there's all sorts of like Anansi stories. Those are really interesting to look into. Spider deity, kind of, who's like a trickster. Very, like, a lot of really fun stories involving him that you could be like, oh, cool, I want to grab this guy. One
of the few that I think permeates more often in our culture. I've seen Anansi like pop up in a few different things.
Yeah, he's one of the most.
Yeah, I remember. I mean, even from grade school, hearing a story or two.
He's basically, he's like I've seen like people, you know, and if you want to like boil it down, he's like that. He's African Loki. Like, that's like, I mean, that's a good basis. Like, that sounds fun to you, then go type it into Google and actually find out about it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Don't just do African Loki. Like, do you know what I mean? I think that's the key, right? Is like, if you hear something that's like, oh, that sounds fun, I want to do that, because it's like a one sentence you've heard, then take that and just go a little bit deeper. Like, what is where is the root of that? Okay, cool. Now I feel like I'm not just being general.
Yeah. And then if you want to put him in like the hat, except the horns are mandibles, like spider jaws,
hey,
that could be pretty cool. But don't
I'm actually gonna go pitch this to the What If guys. So just don't hold fire, guys. What if Loki was black?
What if Loki was black? Yeah.
Well, on the Loki series, there was a black Loki.
Oh yeah, there was. That's very true, actually.
That is true. What if Loki was African? How about that?
Yeah.
Right, yeah. There you go.
Yeah.
All right. So, well, I really appreciate this conversation because it gets me thinking about the work that I'm doing in disabilities. And as someone who does not identify as disabled myself, but has a lot of experience working with other people and did and continue to do a ton of research as I'm working on this and talking to people and stuff. And so, I think what you're saying reflects what I've needed to do for this project and how I see people engaging with my work is, okay, yeah, here, take this. You want to play a character with this particular symptom? Do the research, look it up, find some people, do some more reading, get a sense of what it is before you play it. And yeah, you can't engage with every of the 450 symptoms in the book. You're not going to be able to engage with all of them, at least certainly not at once. And so how do you just picking one or two or so and just really kind of engaging with that and stepping into it. Yeah, you don't have to have the whole background of everything in order to take it, engage with it, and learn something from it in the process.
Yeah,
100%.
Yeah,
I agree.
All right, so how have you seen people's lives change because of your work? What kind of feedback have you guys gotten?
We've heard from a lot of people.
Yeah,
I think the main things that I've heard is people saying the show has opened their eyes to stuff that they hadn't considered, or it has maybe helped them feel validated in some cases if it was stuff that they had considered and hadn't heard anybody say in a public context. A lot of people have said it's helped them approach Dungeons and Dragons or diversity in general in a new way. Those are, I think, the main things that I've heard.
Yeah, I think the nicest one I ever got was from someone who it was two white parents who had adopted a child who was of Asian descent, and they actually said the show helps them understand their child a bit more, like the perspective of their child growing up in a very kind of that white kind of middle class place, and understanding how in ways that they couldn't understand, they might feel othered, even though they are loved and they are cared for by everyone in the community. There is always going to be kind of an unspoken otherness and things like that. And so, I think echoing what Jeremy was saying, but yeah, people just feeling like they've, and I hope this is the case. I think this is the case, that people have just kind of got a bit of a safe space where they can kind of come and kind of hear out some of these thoughts that are going around in their head, and hear it in a safe way, in a way that doesn't feel like it's kind of scary. It feels light and it feels fun, and it feels enjoyable, and not like oh god, the world's a terrible place. That I think we've gotten a bit of that as well, which I think ultimately is one of the things we set out to do. So I'm very glad that that's the case.
Right, and so you just rescued a djinn from the hands of an ifrit, and it offers you 3 wishes to achieve 3BH's goals. What do you wish for?
Unlimited time
Yes.
and resources to make all of the different things that we've been wanting to make, but just have not had the time.
Yes,
to be able
please.
To do.
Honestly, it's a simple wish, but just enough money for me to quit my job. Like if I could just quit my job to work on the show full time. Well, in fact, all of us that are involved, if we could just quit our jobs and work on the show full time,
and to be able to pay collaborators more. We really, I love paying collaborators a lot.
It's nice. It's real nice
because they're so good. The people we've worked with are so good. I want to give them more things.
Incredibly good, and it would be nice to be able to really reward them. Absolutely. Okay, so what have you said? More time, more money.
Yeah. Are those 2? Did we count
That's
those as 2?
What's the third one, Jeremy? What we doing? What we going for?
Oh dang! More time, more money. I had something in my head. And I can't remember what it was. More time, resources. Access to whichever guests we need as well. I would say that as well. Because
Mm.
one thing that we've been trying to kind of do, but we haven't really gotten to do yet, we've been really wanting to start talking to more creators, not just like people like, oh, I have a show, specifically like game creators, people that work at Wizards or people who are creating other games. I think it would be great to be able to talk to more people who are actually creating, not just in TTRPGs, but also I would love to talk to creators in television, in film, like all sorts of different film production, all that kind of stuff. I would love to talk to those people to see what it's like in those other spheres, because look, we're nerds in all sorts of different areas.
Oh,
and I would love to pick the brains.
That's definitely where the show is like going. I'm 100% like, yeah, we need to chat to some directors and some writers and some, do you know what I mean? Because it all feeds into the same boiling pot. If I could be like really simple as well, just a nice tour would be really fun. I'd really enjoy a tour. You know, if I could wish for a tour, I would. Yeah, that'd be good. It'd be good fun.
All right. So what message would you like to give gamers who are part of a marginalized demographic?
I'll jump in, or unless you want to go. You want to go?
No, I've got one, but you go.
Okay. I was going to say, it's getting better. It's getting better. Be patient. And don't just be patient, but also like continue doing the work that you're just by existing in a space like this, you're helping the process. Yeah. Just by being yourself, you are essentially making a statement and helping things move in a more diverse direction.
Absolutely.
And so 100% keep being you and keep existing in these spaces.
Yes.
Your voice matters. And yeah, that's what I would say. Your voice matters. You are, just by existing, you are helping the change that you want to come about.
And I would say, I know it's scary to look sometimes, but your people are out there in this community. Like, I feel like you'd really struggle to not find anyone who you kind of vibe with, who gets you, who understands you. Maybe that means you've got to do Zoom calls across the other side of the world at silly times, but like, if you want it, the people are out there. You will find your community and you will find support, and so yeah, keep looking, because they're there. And if not, I'll play with you. Like, it's like, do you know what I mean? We'll work something out. It's fine.
All right. And so what message would you like to give gamers who are not part of marginalized demographics?
Mine is to engage with content made by people in those demographics, engage with people from those demographics, listen and accept that there's probably a lot that you don't know or understand about their experiences, to such an extent that you probably had no idea that they had these experiences or perspectives. And then do your best to learn and change while being aware that it's a never-ending journey and you're going to make mistakes along the way. And that's okay.
Yeah. Just celebrate people. Like, I think we marginalized groups have gotten out of necessity have got very good at celebrating one another, because we sort of realized that no one else is going to do it for us. And whereas I think that people from non-marginalized groups don't really have that experience of kind of being the underdog necessarily. They don't have to like root for the white cis guy. So because the white cis guy is always fine. So just get used to being loud and supportive for the things that you like, and be genuine in that pursuit. If you like something, then throw your weight behind it, and and give them space to grow. You know, especially if they're from a marginalized group, because we always need all the support you can get, no matter how much success we or other shows like us have had. We pale in comparison to most other shows. Like, so we all, like, there's always support, always things that you can do. There's always projects, there's always a Kickstarter, always a whatever it is, a place that needs a review or a like or a retweet. Just find it and celebrate it.
All right. So any projects that y'all have planning for the future you can talk about?
Yeah, a lot of stuff. I'm not gonna. I wrote a list. None of it's particularly specific, but we're planning on some new guests, some old guests that we'd like to bring back. We have a whole lot of actual play ideas.
So many.
Including this, I can get specific about. We have more Paradox Perfect specifically planned.
Yeah.
We have some mini seasons planned in some new and old settings.
Yeah.
Potentially. follow-ups to our established series, and then hopefully some more full-length seasons and new settings as well. And we definitely want to try out a bunch of new TTRPGs.
Yes.
That is also the other big thing.
Yes. And generally, I think that one thing that I think is exciting about Three Black Halflings is future, much like our past, it comes as a surprise even to us when certain opportunities and doors open. So we will be continuing to embrace things with both hands and seeing where this crazy journey takes us.
All right, so we will have all your contact information in our show notes, but where is the one best place that you'd like people to start to learn more about you or to contact you?
Ooh, the one best, I would say it depends on who you want to contact. If you want to contact Jeremy, hop over on our Discord. It's the best place. Jeremy's always in there on the Discord. And for me, I would probably say Twitter is the best. So at TB Halflings on Twitter. I tend to be pretty across that stuff. So, but yeah. No. All right. Would you say that's fair, Jeremy? Would you say that's generally the best?
I think Twitter, Discord, and then if you could email us.
You could email us. Second breakfast.
Yeah, second breakfast at tbhalflings.com.
Yeah.
Or Patreon. We do respond to Patreon.
We do definitely respond to Patreon. Yeah, for sure. We prioritize definitely responding to the Patreon. So
yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for coming on the show. Everyone, check out those links in the show notes.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks so much. This was a fun time.
All right. So if you have not signed up for our newsletter yet, you can go and do that right now. Just pop over to inclusiverpg.com, or if this is after the Kickstarter is all done, you can just go to wyrmworkspublishing.com. All those links are in the show notes. There are 69 free 4K battle maps. That is right, free. And you get a free subclass, also free discounts, other specials, latest news, blog posts. Go sign up for our newsletter so you don't miss out on any of it. All right, and if you see this being helpful, hit that like button if you're watching this on YouTube. If you'd like to see more of it, subscribe. If you know people that need to hear this, pass it on to them. Send them that link. And if you, like me, think that everyone needs to hear this, this is such a great conversation this week, pass it on to your social media friends. Don't forget those podcast ratings. It makes a huge difference to spread the word by increasing rankings in the algorithms. So wherever you're listening to this, if you could just go in and rate that iTunes directory or whatever it is, we'd really appreciate that. And so our closing question, what benefits have you seen in diversifying the game space?